From the heart of where innovation, money, and power collide in Silicon Valley and beyond, this is Bloomberg Technology with Caroline Hyde and Ed Ludlow.
Live from New York and San Francisco, this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, President Trump says global trade deals and tariff rates are coming in weeks as he ends his technology tour of the Middle East.
Plus, M&A in focus in the world of US cable providers, with Charter agreeing to combine with Cox in a deal valued at about $34.5 billion.
And we're joined by Airbnb CEO Brian Chesky after the company unveils an app overhaul, a new services offering, and a relaunched experiences product. But first, we check in on these markets, which are having a stellar week. We are up more than 6% on the Nasdaq 100 over the last 5 trading days. We cool in terms of that investor enthusiasm on the day. But look, consumer sentiment, ugly, Ed. The second worst on record. We've had some really painful readings across the economy, but maybe inflation not as bad as we expected, and it's risk on when it comes to tech.
We had technology earnings overnight. I go to Applied Materials. This is America's biggest chip making or chip equipment maker. And you can see the stocks down negatively. Current period, weak outlook. Concern about trade, particularly with China. There's a bigger conversation to be had here about the reality of what's happening in investment going forward, despite all the hype with chips. Speaking of hype, we're going to go out to the Middle East soon, right? And the big beneficiaries of President Trump's visit are on this screen, principally Nvidia. Nvidia is up for a 4th straight week, a 4th straight weekly gain, up 15% on the week. And I'm sure AMH Annmarie is going to talk about how Jensen was by the president's side every step of the way. Compare and contrast with Apple, it's still up 6% despite the negative headlines, but it's rebounding from last week where it saw a decline, Carr.
Extraordinary amount of market capitalization added, more than $400 billion to Nvidia alone over the last 5 trading days. And that's as President Trump said, though, that he actually will be looking back at tariff rates for U.S. trading partners, Ed, quote, over the next 2 to 3 weeks, saying his administration actually lacks the capacity to negotiate the deals with all of its trading partners. Let's just run through the week that was with Trump's visit in the Middle East. Bloomberg's Annmarie Hordern joins us now from Abu Dhabi, and he's taken off, he's jetting home, but he leaves a lot of tech optimism in his wake, but a lot of anxiety when it comes to tariffs still to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. And the president talked about those tariffs today. He talked about the fact that there's so many countries that are lining up and want to negotiate with the administration. But right now they're focused on the main trading partners, the European Union, Japan, India, when it comes to some of these other countries. And the president has said this in the past. Most recently, last week, I was with him in the Oval Office, and he talked about this. He said they're just going to set the rate for these countries and let them know where the new rate is. Remember, Liberation Day, April 2nd, that's how the administration wanted to frame it. Very high tariff rates for a number of countries. They put all that on pause. So potentially in July, some of these countries they haven't been able to have these bespoke agreements with, they're just going to set a new rate. So the president is juxtaposing a lot of issues at once. He is still facing some pushback when it comes to countries and investors, when it comes to the tariff policy and the fact that trade deals can take years, with the fact that he's inking deals across the entire Middle East between Riyadh, Doha, and Abu Dhabi. And Caroline, Ed, you were 100% right. Tech was really the star of this entire trip, specifically Nvidia and Jensen Huang. And when I spoke to him briefly in Riyadh, I was entering this honorary dinner for the president with the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. I asked him about the diffusion rule. I said, you must be happy they rescinded. And he said, rescinded? Canceled. And because of that, he is going to be able to get more of those advanced chips into the Middle East. The president name-checked him in Riyadh, saying, my friend Jensen Huang is here. And then a remarkable photo, really, yesterday in Abu Dhabi as Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick was signing this AI partnership between the United States and Abu Dhabi. That would mean building the biggest AI data center outside of the United States, right here in Abu Dhabi. Look at that photo. He is standing in between President Trump and Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. It's Jensen Huang. He's been everywhere on this trip, and you can kind of see why.
Bloomberg's Annmarie Hordern with everything from the ground and a long week on a Middle East tour. Thank you very much. Let's get more on what markets think about President Trump's AI deals and what that means for technology. Ipek Ozkardeskaya is Swissquote senior analyst. And I showed that chart at the top of the show, right? Nvidia, Amazon and Apple over the course of 5 days. As an investor in those names and that sector, what's been the net result for you of everything that's happened this week?
Well, the big technology companies have had a very difficult quarter with the Chinese AI competition coming up and the trade tensions and the deals, the Middle East visit, and these deals are coming right at the best imaginable time so far this year. First of all, we have been seeing companies delaying their AI investment plans due to tariff uncertainties, and there are a lot of questioning regarding how much of these investments could still materialize given the gloomy economic outlook. And the deals just come at the very best time and from the richest countries in the world. So there is a reason Nvidia jumped 15% since Donald Trump's Middle East visit. We think that the Nvidia deals with the Saudi and Qatar and Abu Dhabi is just going to fill in the gap at a very critical time for the chip industry. There is one thing, though, we start hearing that at the White House, some politicians, some members are not fully comfortable with the idea of selling chips to the Middle East due to the national security reasons. But that's a story to be followed. For now, though, the optimism has strong legs.
I want to go there. Annmarie talked about the sort of significance of the images we showed, which was Jensen Huang standing between the President of the United States and his UAE counterpart. But actually, there are deep concerns that the rescinding of the diffusion rule, those are those pictures now, good job to the team in New York, does not at all answer the question about China. We don't know anything about rules for China. Has the market yet to price that in?
Well, I think that most of the Chinese trade war has already been priced in, and investors have somehow came to the conclusion that, okay, China will gently get out of this picture and has a slower exposure to the Western world and vice versa. So there is now the thinking emerging that because China is willing to gain its independence and it looks like it could get there with their own means, that's going to be the future for the Chinese companies. There is this thinking that China is willing to gain its independence, and if they do so, actually, that's going to be a positive for Nvidia because the trade tensions will not necessarily hit them as hard as they have been hit over the past couple of months. This being said, China still remains a big chunk of the Nvidia's revenue. So before we get there, we still have some bump period to go.
Ipek, broaden it out because Nvidia, yes, crushes it on the week, up 15%, more than $400 billion in market cap added. It's, again, a $3 trillion company. Are there legs left to run with Nvidia's up and to the right, and indeed tech more broadly?
Well, I think that Nvidia still has earnings to be announced, and we expect that the earnings are going to be strong enough to keep the optimism going. We shouldn't forget that Nvidia had a very difficult quarter, and we saw a very significant fall in its share price and also in its valuation. And right now, with the arrival of the good news and big clients that actually counterweight the idea and the worries that the big technology clients could be finding their ways out of Nvidia is obviously a very positive news. And we think that Nvidia does have potential to extend and to, extend its rally on the Middle East deals if obviously the Middle East deals materialize and there is not a problem barrier in the future. Yeah, so definitely, yes, it has been an outright positive for Nvidia, we think.
I mean, it's been an outright positive for many a tech stock this week. I'm looking at Alphabet up more than 9% over the last 5 trading days. That's despite the ongoing worries that this is a company that might be forced to break apart. Meta also investigation with its monopolistic, as has been deemed by the FTC, monopolistic position. What do you think are some of the risks that investors perhaps aren't tuning into right now?
Well, one of the other risks that we see, because we are in Europe, is that if the trade negotiations don't go well with the European Union, the European regulators will be going after companies like Google and Facebook, big technology companies. They have been very clear warning the United States about that. So I think that one of the trade risks is on these companies that have been spared so far because they are offering digital services, and it was mostly the companies with complex international supply chains like Nvidia, like Google, Apple, that have been very, very hardly hit. We think that there are still risks there that have maybe not be fully priced in. Obviously, the risks are still two-sided because there is always a chance that the European Union and the US strike a deal. But if that's not the case, I think that Microsoft, Google, and Facebook are also going to come under pressure.
Ipek, Ozkardeskaya of Swissquote, great to have you back on the show. Thank you. Another news story I've been writing about this morning. Tesla is adding a longtime Chipotle executive to its board. Jack Hordern will join as a director and member of the board's audit committee as of June 1st, Tesla said in a filing. This comes as the car maker's grappling with thorny questions over Elon Musk's compensation and its strategic direction. Carr.
And coming up, some M&A, Ed. Charter and Cox, the two biggest US cable providers, they agreed to merge in a deal valued at about $34.5 billion. Details next. This is Bloomberg Technology. Charter Communications. Well, it's agreed to combine with privately held Cox Communications in a deal that would unite the two of the biggest US cable providers. The transaction will value Cox at about $34.5 billion, including debt. That's according to a statement Friday that actually confirmed earlier Bloomberg News reports. Who was doing that reporting? Michelle Davis was, and she joins us now. Michelle, it's interesting that this is a fiercely competitive space. Does it just have to end in consolidation?
That's basically what the Cox family is saying. I mean, they have been owners of cable assets for 70 years, and the fact that they're now saying, okay, it's time to combine means that that's how fierce it is. And you know what's going on is cable companies have been making their revenue from internet, but everyone has broadband internet these days, and at the same time, the phone companies are getting into it, and people are cutting the cord, and so the idea is this is what they have to do to survive.
John Malone is the billionaire that's sort of behind some of these deals. In fact, maybe he signaled this earlier than the deal came about, right? He had an investor day saying, look, I want to combine Charter with someone else. I need to be able to make a deal here.
Yeah, this is one of those perennial deals that John Malone has wanted to do for more than 10 years. And it took time for it to get there, but in December or November during the Liberty Media Investor Day, he said it's gotten so competitive. The tech companies are allowed to just roam the earth without limits. And why should cable companies just be restricted to one part of the country? They should be allowed, Charter, he said, should be allowed to merge with Cox, Comcast, or T-Mobile. And I guess they chose Cox.
And what's interesting is that meanwhile, the T-Mobiles, the AT&Ts, the Verizons are busy trying to do wireless offerings. And they're almost offering their services to some cable providers. Is this therefore going to get through regulatory scrutiny because it's just so fiercely competitive?
So it's going to be the big litmus test of the Trump administration to see how it's received. The companies clearly believe that they have a shot at getting it through. The way the cable industry is structured in the U.S. means there's not any overlap in terms of geographies that these companies play in. And I think part of why they're focusing on this competitive element is because their argument is we need to do this to survive.
It's been great talking to you, Michelle Davis. We appreciate it. Meanwhile, Ed, you're looking at another key story.
Yeah, turning to Coinbase, the crypto platform disclosed it had suffered from a hack that leaked sensitive customer data going as far back as January. The revelation coming just 3 days after Coinbase was added to the S&P 500. Bloomberg's Margi Murphy's here. Let's go to the basics and details of the hack. What were hackers able to obtain? How did they do it? And what was the kind of net effect for Coinbase and Coinbase customers?
Right. So back in January, the threat actor realized that they could get access to some of Coinbase's contractors in their customer support assistance teams. And essentially, the threat actor was bribing individual employees or contractors and saying, I'll give you cash if you give me the information on Coinbase customers. And they have been giving a drip feed through since January up until around this week when Coinbase say it received an anonymous email saying, I'm the person who's been bribing your customer support assistants. I have this pool of information on some of the most valuable customers you own. Give me $20, give me $20 million, and I will delete that information. And this week, Coinbase, yesterday, disclosed that had been going on and that they refused to pay the ransom and they wanted to come public with it instead.
That's right. If you're just tuning in, I mean, Coinbase shares are pretty buoyant in Friday's session. They had fallen by 7% or so in Thursday's session. The simple question is, what happens next? Right. So Coinbase has estimated that this is probably going to cost them around $400 million. And what they're saying to customers is, look, the hacker didn't access your account through us, but they got a lot of information that they could very easily socially engineer you. So they've been sending out emails to people they believe have been affected. And they are saying, if you do suffer a loss as a result of this data being leaked, we will compensate you. So we'll Margi,
have to see.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. In your career covering cybersecurity and hacks like this, where does this rank in sort of corporate world?
It's pretty bad. It's the way that the hackers can use this information to target wealthy people. They are able to see the balances in their Coinbase accounts, and they now have very, very detailed information on these individuals that they can go and socially engineer them, not just to get into their Coinbase accounts, but into other financial accounts that they might own. And by social engineering, I mean calling up and saying, I'm a bank support assistant. And when the person questions, well, how can you prove that? Give me some information about my account. And they can say, well, I have names, emails, balance, your last transactions. It's all very convincing information. So I think in terms of, they may not have gotten into Coinbase's systems per se and broken into their networks, but the mushrooming effect this will have on people's personal data and the potential impacts it could have on people, individuals losing their money, is pretty big.
Bloomberg's Margi Murphy on a breaking and fast-moving story. Thank you very much. Coming up, a potential AI delay from Meta. More on the company's behemoth hold-up. This is Bloomberg Technology. TikTok is willing to talk about its Brazil operations with the South American country's government, according to an official. This follows a visit to China earlier this week, when President Lula and the First Lady expressed concerns over the potentially harmful effects the app may have on children and women. Carr.
Let's just turn our attention to other social media players, because Meta, Ed, shares still lower. That's after the Wall Street Journal reported that the company will delay the release of its AI model, the latest one. It's called Behemoth. For more, Bloomberg Riley Griffin can talk not only about the AI models, but also what's been happening with the FTC. But I go first to Behemoth. How important is it that they're perhaps not able to make significant incremental improvements on the overall model?
So this is Meta's biggest model. It's one that they have pointed to as a landmark and said that is better than ChatGPT's comparable model, Claude's. They've talked a big game about Behemoth. The delays here are interesting. They were supposed to release the model in April, according to our colleagues at the Wall Street Journal, but it's now looking like it'll be delayed to the fall. And the point here that I think we need to take, Caroline, is that each incremental development is going to become increasingly harder to achieve. Some of the big advancements that we saw earlier on, 2022, 2023, through now, it's becoming harder and harder to advance these models in ways that are worth the releasable milestone.
Well, it's a difficult undertaking, right? But did the report say specifically why it's delayed or who made the call?
The report said that internally, senior executives at the company are disappointed with the team and the milestones that they're reaching so far. It didn't explain exactly why it was being delayed. So we're going to have to keep watching this story unfold. And Meta at this time is not commenting.
I mean, Ed, it's interesting, isn't it, that all of this comes at a time with Meta that not only are they trying to push the envelope on generative AI, but they're also under a lot of stress, it would seem, in the courts, trying to say, look, Instagram and overall WhatsApp are not monopolistic. There are so many others out there competing, but the FTC thinks that there aren't, that it's limited to Snap.
No doubt. And AI, as you mentioned here, is not just a story about the chatbots and the models, but it's about how they're integrated into the applications themselves. So the future of Instagram, the future of WhatsApp has a lot to do with the capabilities here.
Bloomberg's Riley Griffin, thank you very much. A big take. Microsoft's Copilot AI is gaining traction among its customers. But the company's investment and relationship with OpenAI could complicate things for CEO Satya Nadella. It's the subject of today's big take. Bloomberg's Austin Carr wrote it and joins us now. In part, this is informed with time you spent with Mr. Nadella, right? But the Copilot launch wasn't smooth, wasn't great. They want to put time into it. They have to manage their investment and relationship with OpenAI, which has a competing set of products and offerings.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, I would just, turn to your viewers out there and ask, have you used Copilot, or is it more likely that you're using ChatGPT, if not even paying for a ChatGPT subscription? And that's the big challenge for Microsoft right now. OpenAI really was successful thanks to Microsoft. Its $13.75 billion investment over the years in the company, as well as all the money it poured into GPUs and data centers to help with that back-end processing. The issue is that sort of gave OpenAI a head start, but Microsoft has had to play catch up on its own app offerings like Copilot, which is both available in the enterprise for customers using Word and Excel, as well as the standalone consumer version, which you can get on Windows, Macs, and your iPhone. And it's just really been a challenge for Microsoft to show why it's different, because a lot of people at the beginning just saw it as a knockoff of ChatGPT with a different brand name, because it was still tapping into OpenAI's models underneath. And that's what Satya Nadella is trying to differentiate now, building up Microsoft's own models, trying to differentiate their product through integrations with Microsoft software.
You've got Mustafa Suleyman, who we all know well on the consumer side, but you introduced us to a new executive that others might not have heard of so much, Asha Sharma, really leading the charge here from the company's AI platform perspective. What does she bring?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's so fascinating here is she's building up a product called Azure AI Foundry, which is their sort of AI marketplace that's available on Microsoft's leading cloud platform. And I think, a lot of people have this grand misunderstanding about Microsoft that it's really wedded to OpenAI, when in fact that model marketplace offers about 1,900 very varied models, including internal Microsoft models, as well as external third-party ones like Meta, which you were just talking about a moment ago. So Microsoft and Satya Nadella are really hedging their bets on OpenAI. So you can rent OpenAI models through Azure AI Foundry, which is something Asha is leading, but you can also get access to Cohere, Mistral, Meta, as well as more recently DeepSeek's models that are adding to the platform.
Austin Carr, it's a brilliant read. Go get it on Business Week, a long and very deep and thorough one on Microsoft as it stands. Meanwhile, coming up, Airbnb, adding luxury services, new experiences. We're going to be talking with the CEO, Brian Chesky, about how the vacation rental company overhauled its entire tech stack. This is Bloomberg Technology. Welcome back to Bloomberg Technology. I'm Caroline Hyde in New York.
And I'm Ed Ludlow in San Francisco. So in the moment this Friday, when we think about at the index level in markets, tech's kind of taking a time out. We're flat on the NASDAQ 100, but it has been a strong gain on a weekly basis. We're up about 6% on the NASDAQ 100. A lot of what's driven that gain over the course of the week has been the technology companies that have been beneficiaries of President Trump's visit to the Middle East, the AI infrastructure deals, your Nvidias, your Dells, your Amazons, for example. But the story this Friday is a little bit economic, Carr, and we'll get to it later in the program. A gauge of US consumer sentiment was worrying, I think, for the markets. But again, from a headline perspective, there's been a fire hose Monday through Thursday. And I kind of feel like in the world of tech, at least, we're taking a timeout.
We are indeed. Maybe a pause, but there's no pause in terms of deal making right now. And let's just go to food delivery companies, Ed. They have been hungry for consolidation, using deals to enter new markets and new areas of lifestyle, basically. This all includes Prosus, which just announced, of course, relatively recently to buy Just Eat Takeaway for $4.3 billion. There's a new strategic partnership between Uber and Prosus's Brazil portfolio company, iFood. And not to mention the fact that they're getting into travel as well, with a completed deal just announced overnight. Fabricio Bloisi is with us, CEO of Prosus Group. You are such a global company. I know you've just been deemed Brazil's Man of the Year, so your voice is a little bit hoarse. Congrats.
Hello, Caroline. Pleasure to be here with you again.
Well, congrats also on all this deal making. But I'm really interested as to, let's just go to, say, the strategic partnership with Uber in Brazil. Why decide that's a partnership and that's not M&A to add on delivery services and mobility?
We are super excited about food delivery. As you know, we just announced 2 months ago the $4.5 billion acquisition of Just Eat Takeaway. We are waiting for the confirmation of this acquisition. But Latin America is very important for our strategy. Latin America ecosystem there. So we have not only iFood, but our payment business, but our event business. We just closed today our travel transaction there. It was approved today. So we just bought Despegar for close to 2 billion euro. But we don't have our ride-hailing offer. And what we did was a strategic partnership with Uber. So Uber did not have the food delivery. Now Uber will have iFood inside Uber. And we will have ride-hailing inside iFood. We think we can serve much better our customers, not only our customers, but Uber customers working together. I think that's the future, offer more to our users. It's a partnership, and we are very excited about that, to work closer with Uber.
Let's talk about the mechanics of the deal. You're a deal maker. What is the sort of regulatory path been like in that country? What's it like doing business in that region? And for the basics of our audience, you're going to get that deal closed and done, right?
We are very excited that today, a few hours ago, we just got our online travel agency deal closed. This is Despegar, so we acquired Despegar, and it was approved today by the regulators. We are very excited about that. The Uber deal is not a merge, it's a commercial partnership where we are going to offer to our customers access to Uber, their customers access to iFood. So we are not waiting for regulatory approval for this deal. We can move fast, we can offer better service to our customers. That's the idea.
Ed, I'll just jump in now, because I think what's interesting is how you align data sharing with Uber. How do you decide what revenue each one takes? What is the deal, the intricacies of the deal here that benefits both of you? Because I know you're focused on data because that's the AI win, right?
Yes, perfect. This deal specifically is about offering more services to our customers. So we're not sharing revenue. We are going to keep the food delivery revenue, Uber keep the ride-hailing revenue. What we do is to offer to all customers in Brazil food delivery and ride-hailing together. That's the focus of the deal. But last time I came here to talk to you, in London actually, I talked a lot about AI, and that's the biggest focus of Prosus. I just released a letter this week talking about we are doing super well, we are growing a lot, we are more than 10% better than the forecasts I gave. But besides that, I'm more excited about how fast we are moving in AI. We announced our large commerce model that is a very big AI model that consolidates all transactional information in all Prosus to train a model to serve better our customers. So we are innovating a lot using OpenAI 4 and DeepSeek and all kind of new models to really make a step forward in how AI advance on e-commerce. So data is a big priority for us. We are investing a lot on that. And we are just starting to release the good results of that.
And what you call yourself is sort of lifestyle e-commerce.
Lifestyle
what else do you bolt on? Look, we've got the food delivery, you've got the mobility side, you've got the travel with this new travel operator that you've been buying. What else comes to that?
Payment. And I think it's good enough for now. So let me deliver lots of results on that, and then we'll put some adjacencies before. But as you can see, food delivery is very important because food delivery is a very high frequency business. People buy sometimes 5, 10, 20 times per week. So on top of food delivery, we are putting many other adjacencies as payments, as travel, as events. But why I'm very excited now, Prosus now is much more focused in 3 ecosystems. The first ecosystem of our focus is Latin America. So you have all these business, all these offers working together in Latin America. Our second focus is India, and we have also Swiggy, that is a food delivery business in India. On top of that, payments, PayU, and Meshu, and Urban Company, other companies in India. So we are doing the same ecosystem approach in India. And our third, and I'm very excited about that focus, is Europe. I think Europe needs big tech in Europe. Now we just bought Just Eat Takeaway. As I told you last time, we have $18 billion to invest. We want to invest a lot in Europe. And on top of Just Eat Takeaway, as soon as our deal is approved, so we are waiting for Europe to approve that, we are going to be able to invest 10 times more in AI in Europe. That's my big goal.
So, Fabricio, you took us around the world there on a jet plane, but with the Just Eat deal, there's a shareholder complaint, right? They basically think 20 euros and 30 cents is less than half what you should be paying. What's the latest on that? Do you see it changing?
We are very confident this is a very good offer for both sides. We are paying around 50%, it's a little more, 55 or 60% premium in their previous price. So we are very confident this is a great offer. We got very good reception for most of the shareholders. Our expectation is to close. We have a strong expectation to close at the offer, and we think it's an amazing offer to the shareholders.
What other regions next? Which country are you going to surprise us with your next deal? We just have 10 seconds.
Latin America, India, and Europe, the biggest tech company outside US and China. Let me surprise you, getting to $200 billion very fast, and come here to talk about our next steps.
Fabricio Bloisi, CEO of Prosus Group, great to have you back on the show. Thank you very much for coming up.
Thank you for having me.
A conversation with Airbnb CEO Brian Chesky. That interview is next. This is Bloomberg Technology. This is Bloomberg Technology, and you're looking at a live shot of the principal room. Check out the Bloomberg Technology podcast. You find it on the terminal, as well as online on Apple, Spotify, and iHeart. This is Bloomberg.
We welcome to our radio and TV audiences worldwide now Airbnb, out with a redesigned app that puts a greater emphasis on services, on one-of-a-kind experiences. But this is as, of course, anxiety remains about consumer sentiment, about our desire to travel abroad right now. Let's get through all of that with Airbnb's plans. We're joined by CEO Brian Chesky. Brian, welcome. And Airbnb more than a home. You want to be sort of an Airbnb for the world.
Yeah.
And for services, tell us the revenue drivers here. Why is more experiences, more services going to lead to a bigger business and investable opportunity?
Well, I mean, as big as Airbnb is, and we do around $90 billion a year in bookings, there's so much greater opportunity for people to monetize the biggest asset in their life. And it's not their home, it's their time. And so what if all the people's skills, all the people's passion, their expertise could be monetized? A huge percent of the jobs in the United States and around the world are becoming, essentially services jobs. And there is no Amazon for services, People say Amazon's the everything store. It's kind of the everything in a cardboard box store. But there's this whole other world. It requires trust. It requires two people to have an exchange between one another. I think that's where Airbnb's core competency is. What we built is an extensible platform that's not limited to homes.
What's interesting is the chefs, the massages, the other key services that you're offering do have to be vetted.
Yes.
That's when you get the scale.
Yes.
How are you going to scale that if you're doing this on a person-to-person basis? How much does ML then take over?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we do, and I think a lot of what everyone in technology does, is you start things by hand, you learn the rules, and you train the technology, and the technology takes over, either does it or augments the people. And that's exactly what it was like here. We start very much by hand, and then we build tools to automate the tasks that people are doing.
Brian, I started using Airbnb in the UK around 2010-11 when I went to college, right? And that was before Uber even launched in the UK. And when I think about the development of platforms and app technologies like yours, the one point of difference that an Airbnb has versus an Uber is that you don't yet have advertising. Whereas you look at Uber's ad growth, now for them on the investor side, it's a really big thing. How do you think about that?
I think it's a huge opportunity. One of the frameworks I really like around how to invest is you want to invest in the most perishable opportunities first. And so we think a really perishable opportunity is, launching services and experiences. The timing is right. We think advertising is a huge opportunity for us. It's an inevitable opportunity for us, but we don't think it's the most perishable opportunity. So it hasn't been something we've prioritized in our near-term roadmap. I also think it's really good to first extend our platform from homes to services, experiences, and beyond. So when we build things, we can build them as a horizontal platform.
Inevitable. That's really interesting. You got a lot of credit this week for the relaunch of the app and its ability to give you some long-term growth. I'd just be grateful to hear how you think it will drive long-term growth. I think from the street's perspective, that's more about revenue growth and profit, but maybe scale of the platform as well.
I think there's three things. Number one, there's a whole bunch of people who don't book Airbnbs because they don't come with services. They go to hotels. So what if you could offer all the services of a hotel and more in Airbnb? So that's one way we actually could grow, is to get a lot more customers. The second way we can grow is a lot of people use Airbnb, but they only book one thing on the reservation, a home. So we can essentially get a greater share of wallet on the trip. And the third and the longest term opportunity is local demand. We think a lot of these services and experiences that we're initially building out for travel consumers are eventually going to be things you're going to want to book in your own city. And that is an even significantly greater market. So there's really these three types of horizons.
Cosplaying with Megan Thee Stallion, learning volleyball with an Olympian in Rio. How did you get these one-off experiences? I mean, is this making some phone calls?
Yeah, I mean, a year ago we launched Icons, which are these extraordinary experiences hosted by the biggest names in culture. We had, we made the Up House float in the sky, and we did all these really cool experiences. And then we started thinking to ourselves, how do we bring that magic to experiences? And we built this network of really interesting celebrities and global icons. And one of the things that we found is a lot of them heard about what we're doing, they reached out to us. I think a lot of these global celebrities want to connect directly with their fans. They don't just want to have a parasocial relationship on social media. And I think the more we talk about AI, the more we start to realize that we are accelerating our life living in a digital realm. We're spending more and more time on devices. And we want to be the kind of company that are getting people off devices into the real world, just as a balance. And I think that could be a very exciting proposition for the future.
As you can imagine, this show's been talking about AI relentlessly for the last 3 years. But we took a pause and started talking about tariffs and the economy relentlessly. You said now is the perfect moment to be launching these services and experiences. Why, in this environment where you saw consumer sentiment today is woefully low?
I mean, well, number one, we reported really, really good growth within travel. So I think people are still traveling. And I think when consumer sentiment is unsteady, they still want to travel, but they often want to find more affordable options. Airbnb is a great way to do that. But beyond that, this is a very long-term bet that we're making over the next 5 years. And I think this will endure across any kind of economy. It's just good to remind people, Airbnb started during the Great Recession of 2008. And so I think a lot of the great businesses are starting during, kind of a weakened economy.
Brian, you're pivoting to founder mode, right?
Yeah.
How's that going to help Airbnb navigate the world that it's in right now?
I think founder mode basically just means running a large company with a hands-on approach where you're in the details, you're leaders in the details, and everyone's rowing in the same direction like a startup. I think those principles are more important now than ever with this new technological revolution that's in front of us. You need people that are able to basically have their hands on the steering wheel and not be, in essentially like a self-driving car, which is, how more professional managers typically run things. So I think this is the perfect time to lean into the future, to put the pedal to the metal, put your hand on the steering wheel, and really drive transformation. And I think a lot of the great companies in history have been led that way.
With that in mind, Airbnb, the technology company, what's its core competency? What are your people really good at that other companies are not?
I think a few things. Probably a few, but I'll highlight just two on the right now.
Please.
The first is our application. I think we have one of the most beautifully well-designed and built apps in the world. We're able to show it's incredibly intuitive. I believe we have one of the best design teams in the world. So we have really great applications. And so take AI, there's a lot of development on the large language model layer. But the applications haven't seen a lot of development. If you pick up your phone, almost every app looks exactly like it did before generative AI came on the scene. So that's the first thing. The second is probably even more important, the offline world. We're really good at building apps, but I think we're even better at designing this system of trust between two strangers to live together. I mean, nearly 4 million people a day live together on Airbnb in nearly every country in the world. Think about all the ways you need to keep people safe, handle their issues, match supply and demand, facilitate money, make sure they're having great experiences. There's so much more. The offline world, the Airbnb, when people see Airbnb, they see an app, and the app is just to scratch the surface of our community.
I love that you're talking online and offline. Briefly, when you're thinking about Klarna having to decide that actually all the AI focus has to be unwound a little bit, customer service is not working as they wanted, bring people back. You're bringing AI to customer service. How's that going, and how much do you have to rely on people still?
We still have to rely a lot on people. I think it's going incredibly well. We launched a customer service agent in the United States to all English-speaking users, where now if you need help, you can reach out to an AI customer service agent. It's a front line. It's been trained on, hundreds of millions of customer trips to be able to be 24/7 and be an escalation point to humans or be able to answer the question themselves. But I think the key lesson here is you don't want to rush into a trend. I think that people got really, really excited about AI. They inevitably thought it's the future. It's going to do all these tasks in the future. All that's true, but you can't skip steps. And people want things to work. And so, we didn't want it to be an AI lab. We wanted it to be something people could trust. And so we've been very, very careful about focusing on solving real problems responsibly with a model that doesn't hallucinate. And I think that's what we're doing.
Airbnb CEO and co-founder Brian Chesky. It's great to have you back on Bloomberg Technology. Thank you very much. Now, coming up, thank you. Now, coming up, from banana pudding to the trade war to tech billionaires in DC, Bloomberg's new podcast is going to break down the business news impacting our lives. The hosts join us next. This is Bloomberg Technology.
A new weekly podcast from Bloomberg launches today, covering business stories that are relevant to absolutely everybody, and is aptly titled Everyone's Business. The hosts, Bloomberg's Max Chafkin, Stacey, Vanek Smith, join us now. Max, what's the USP here? How are you going to set yourself differently from all the other business conversations?
Well, there's so much going on in the economy right now. You have tariff news changing every day. Obviously, AI, we heard that in the last conversation. And all this stuff affects, the markets. It affects businesses and the decisions they make. But it also affects, the real decisions that regular people make. And that's the connection we're trying to make. We're trying to bring some sort of smart analysis and basically help people figure out what to do with their money, figure out what decisions to make, and figure out how to make sense of the world.
Stacey, as a journalist covering technology, sometimes the written word's not enough. And that is no more true than when I'm confronted with the transatlantic issue of the banana pudding. Please explain the detail to our audience how this podcast will crack that issue.
Well, crack might be the key word there. Obviously, inflation has been a huge issue all over the world, in the U.S. and, of course, in the UK as well. But eggs, of course, are a big concern here in the U.S. The price of eggs, they were down a little bit. We got some pretty good inflation news this week. But I think a lot goes into a banana pudding. In fact, there's labor, there's overhead. If you're a business making banana pudding, you are dealing with all of the economic forces that are affecting us all every day. And so I think that's the kind of thing we're going to be looking into through the lens of banana pudding. I think you can see the whole economy, I would argue.
A lens, a beautiful, delicious lens into the whole economy. I mean, let's talk sports. Look, New York is on tenterhooks for a game tonight. We're all worried about NJ Transport. But I'm interested more broadly, Max, on how the business of sports is going to fold into this, how this becomes entertainment at the same time as business.
We had a great conversation for the episode that hit today, which you can get anywhere you get your podcast, with Randall Williams, who's a Bloomberg sports reporter, Business Week contributor, and it's all about the rising valuations of teams. And how that's changing how teams operate. We're getting a new breed of sports owners. The sort of prototypical sports owner who would sort of a rich guy who's into the team is being replaced by these institutional investors, private equity guys, which of course, I think it's exciting if you own a sports team and you want to, make more money. But it's also, from the fans' point of view, it could be kind of troubling because obviously private equity has a somewhat checkered reputation when it comes to coming into businesses.
Bloomberg's Max Chafkin and Stacey Vanek Smith, their new podcast, Everybody's Business, is out today. Check it out. Caroline, that does it for this edition of the television show, Bloomberg Technology.
We also have a podcast. So keep your pictures coming for the podcast and the TV show. You can find it on the terminal as well as online on Apple, Spotify, and iHeart. And go back over some of our CEO conversations today because they're global, they're important, and they discuss things like the impact of inflation and our desire to go traveling and indeed to get our food delivered. From New York, from San Francisco, this is Bloomberg Technology.